Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nilay Verma. I'm the co-founder of Primus Partners. And having personally spent 7 years in driving investment promotions strategies for multiple state and ministries, personally feel very excited moderating this discussion today, which many have called India's opportunity in the post-COVID world. A few weeks back, actually, Mr. Nitin Gadkari was speaking at an ASSOCHAM webinar, and he mentioned that he estimates about 20 to 25 lakh crore, which is approximately $330 billion, can come into the country's manufacturing sector as India becomes an essential part of the global supply chain. This webinar is to really discuss how part of that roadmap. Just to set a very quick context, many have said never let a good crisis go to waste. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, India does believe that it can be an alternate manufacturing destination for companies around the world, which really is reliant on a single country, which very often has had the political and economic system at odds with the principles of transparency, democracy, and partnership that most other nations are defined by. I think India does believe it is perhaps the most promising option for multinationals to diversify their operations, de-risk their supply chain, maybe even starting perhaps as BCP when it comes to India. I think in the context, and we will discuss what has changed, but there are 3 or 4 points I thought would be good before I request Deepak to talk about it. I think one, we've seen a significant investment into the National Infrastructure Plan. India has planned about $1.4 trillion over the next 5 years for infrastructure, and about $25 billion has been allocated this year. I think that's really important. Just a few days back, actually, we set up an empowered group of secretaries to actually oversee the implementation of investment-related policies and reform, wherein every ministry is coming up with a project development cell which will help coordinate and drive a coherent strategy. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the meetings happened a couple of hours back, and I'm sure Deepak is going to talk about it. I think 2 other key points. One is sectoral reforms. It's not just about a broad brush belief that India needs to be a global manufacturing hub. I think sector by sector, we're doing reform, whether it is in terms of bulk drugs, wherein 14,000 crores has been allocated as incentive for being able to drive it, whether it's electronics, whether it's a defense. Across all sectors, the intent is fairly clear. And the last point, which really is about how India is perceived. Even when things weren't going very well, there was sluggishness. One of our technology giant, Facebook, announced that it's acquiring 9.99% in Geo Platform, which is about 43,574 crores deal, which puts the enterprise value at about 4.62 trillion. So I think there is hope, but clearly a lot more needs to be done, and that's what we're going to discuss today. We've got a large number of very significant people on the panel, which really needs no introduction. In fact, any introduction would not do justice to their experience and expertise. Having said so, I will make an attempt to introduce them as they come to speak. But let me start first by inviting Deepak. Deepak is the Secretary General for ASSOCHAM, driving the engagement strategy for ASSOCHAM to set the stage. Over to you, Deepak.
Thank you, Nilay, very much. Harinder, I would request all mics, if you could put, I was getting a bit of an echo. Thank you very much, all speakers and delegates who have joined us on behalf of ASSOCHAM, President and speakers, with your permission. I think in the last 19 years, we have got about a $450 billion of FDI that has come through to us. This has actually happened with a lot of emphasis on how we make doing of business easy. And Amitabh Kant, who's going to join us shortly, is the man who's known for having started this competitive federalism through the whole space, and therefore we have seen a lot since we have come from there. The states are competing with each other, and I think it's now going to the next level where we're trying to find that districts are now becoming competitive as to receiving money. Union budget of 1920 opened certain sectors for FDI, aviation, media, and insurance under consultation with industry. We have seen e-commerce policy being come out so that we can attract enough and more of policy investment from outside in this space, and also giving a level playing field for all involved. UNTAD has said Indian economy is highly resilient as compared to Southeast Asian countries, because I think it is largely to do with that we are a domestic consuming country, and this large market is what is going to drive the growth that one is trying to talk about, and the investment that we are looking at. And obviously this will be all pegged on how easy we are to do business with, whether it is in terms of selling goods or in terms of manufacturing goods. I think COVID has been one of the biggest showstoppers for the world, and it's a new normal. Most of us would have never been sitting on computers like this and looking at things. I think it's all about opening up and operating of businesses. There are crises around health and economic crisis. There are localized and national lockdowns which are to be worried about. Sealing of international borders, disruption in trade, closing of flights and opening of flights. And these are some of the very large issues that are in front of us, and we are not insulated. And if we are impacted, as is anybody else in the world. And therefore, given this as a backdrop, I think the FDI flows would retard in the year by 40% in the current going forward, and maybe another year or two it will take for it to actually start trickling in once again. And for that matter, it becomes extremely important for us to intrinsically look at our own strengths and start working with. Nile has already spoken about how investment is still coming in, and we've got VCs and tech companies trying to buy out platforms. Geo platform, they've invested $1.6 trillion from the Vista Equity Fund, and we have received almost $9+ billion, $6.323 billion, which is close to about 10% of Reliance Jio's stake. We have also got Amazon to commit $1 billion to digitize the entire MSME space with which they deal, and also creating jobs, 1 million jobs by 2025. And similarly, something has also been done close to $1 billion in 5 years by MasterCard. So largely the call made by the Prime Minister of India on Atmanirbhar Bharat, the self-reliant India, is a very timely and most important call. I think we need to look ourselves intrinsically as to how strong can this country become and how competitive we can be, so that once we are competitive intrinsically, obviously coupled with a lot of policy changes for supporting manufacturing, we will be able to produce for not for ourselves alone, but also for the world. So that be the case. This crisis has resulted into challenges with respect to supply chains. People will have to de-risk their supply chains. There will be remodeling of business models. And therefore, when this happens, with India being a very consumption-driven economy, there is a chance where if we play our cards well, that we would benefit from such a situation as we go forward. Obviously, we need to prioritize our things. We can't do everything in one go. We need to go step 1, 2, 3, 4. And as we move along, there are challenges with respect to labor laws. I'm told it's already with the parliament, where we are trying to iron out these issues, land-related matters, infrastructure, industrial infrastructure matters, and especially for the MSMEs as a component and suppliers to the tier 1 companies. Plug-and-play facilities are also something would be important for any industry to go forward, as we talk about. Not dwelling too much into it, but just to tell you, there is about 22 million square feet of ready industrial space available across India, which can be populated by people within 6 to 8 weeks. So which is something that is on offer by India, and this is across India under 10 clusters, where we already have a lot of large corporations successfully doing businesses. There's another factor that goes in the advantage in this country, is that if you relocate into India, you are going to get the lowest corporate tax, which is 17.16 for 3 years, so which helps you offset your cost or improve your profitability. And as I would like to conclude, there are certain areas where I think there's a lot of engagement that is required between the government of India and the industry, and we need to ensure, and as domestic manufacturers, we need to go up the value chain, we need to produce quality products, we need to take up scale, so that we can be seen as people who have prominence in manufacturing. Another thing is very, very important is localization of supply chain, which will strengthen the component ecosystem. Today, we can't make, I'm taking a very strange example, a lady's shoe. We don't make a single lady's shoe in India for the simple reason we do not have components. Whether it is auto components or for that matter, any other component, we do not have this thing, and we are very easily importing these stuff. We can easily produce them. And therefore, this will help us to drive the Make in India part 2 very successfully. I think besides the policy consistency, which any industry would want to see, I think the final word would be a string infrastructure, and the most important thing, which is the logistic cost. Efficient and cost-effective logistics is something which is very, very important. I was talking to a few industries, and some of them say India is a great market, but doing business, they say that we will think about it. Now, this is something which people carry in their heads, and Deepak Bagla from Invest India is trying his best to go all over the world to change this mindset. I think that's exactly what one needs to look at, and change this mindset of the world. And I'm sure we will succeed as a country, as industry of India. Thank you so much, Nilay. Back to you. Harinder, is Nilay there?
Hello. Hello.
Okay, so I think we're having some technical issues with Nilay. So
Hello.
may I take the opportunity to invite?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
I can hear you.
go ahead, Nilay, over to you.
Yeah, so Deepak, while we're waiting for Mr. Kant to join, I actually wanted to invite Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani for his comments. I mean, everybody knows about Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani. He's the president of AstroCham, and and I would say the visionary man redesigning the skyline of Mumbai. Over to you, Dr. Hiranandani.
Thank you very much, Nilay. Thank you very much, Deepak Sood. I think both of you gave an extremely wide understanding of the issues that we really have in order to achieve the Prime Minister's target of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The Make in India thought process is very well understood, and I think it's a wonderful direction in which India can do. I will only not go into whatever has been already said, but try to flag off maybe a couple of things that we really need to focus on. The first is land. Availability of land appears to be a big issue in most of the cases of people who want to come in for projects into India. What we really need to do is to create what Mr. Deepak Sood just mentioned, a kind of a center where all the millions of square feet that he's talking about should be available on the website, so that people don't have to really go and struggle at the state level in order to get the lands in various things, and the terms and ways that we can do it. If government agrees, if the ministry agrees, ASSOCHAM could be the center which could coordinate this work. The second bit, which is important, is the labor issues. Labor issues have been modified from state to state, and several states have come up with new policy measures which allow flexibility in terms of recruitment of labor. And this also needs to be documented and stated as to what the availability of labor in terms of what is available of skills in each area, because it's extremely important to do it. So you have centers where you get IT professionals, you have centers where you can do car manufacturing, you have centers where you can carry out electronic items. So you have centers in various places that you can do. So the second part is really labor part of it. The third part of the entire thing that we need to do is to work on an infrastructure bank. Up till now, capital can come in from abroad, but we also need to see that we have an infrastructure bank. We used to have it earlier. Even ICICI once was on the infrastructure issues. Now all the banks have turned into commercial banks. So we don't have any long-term lending institution. NIIF is one of those institutions, but I think we need to set up a couple of more institutions in order to make this difference that is going to be done. The next important point is how the investment is to be seen by the government. Recently, a large company investments which have done in the last year almost $20 billion, which is their Blackstone. That company has got 11% shares held by a Chinese investment company in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, because of that, the question mark as to whether further investments can be made by that company. So I think government needs to clarify this issue very quickly in order to say how this is to be handled, because a company which had already invested. Oh, good afternoon, sir. Mr. Amitabh Kant has just joined us.
Yeah, please. Good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon, sir. We are extremely honored in ASSOCHAM to have you here this afternoon. Thank you very much for making the time. You know, we have a huge amount of regard and respect for you and the proactive way that you have taken up all the matters that we have represented. We have been able to co-talk on various issues in various ministries, and I can only say thank you very much with my folded hands for the kind of proactiveness that you have shown, and also the kind of work that you are personally being propagated for the purposes of Make in India. I'm going to go very fast because we would like to hear you. So I will just go very fast. There are 4 or 5 points that I took out. The first is land availability is an issue for people who are coming into India. So maybe we can put up a kind of a get together in terms of maybe an app or something wherein people will know where lands are going to be available and which states are going to give on what terms and conditions. Number 2, the labor availability. We have strengths of labor in various locations. For instance, if you want automobile workers, you will get it in Chennai, you will get it in Pune, you will get it in certain locations in North India. The third part of it is the issue of labor laws that have been changed in various states. Maybe we can get together a compendium which can really both. The fourth point which I mentioned, sir, was an infrastructure bank that we need to create. We can get people who bring in capital from overseas, but we do need a banking system which does long-term funding for infrastructure and long-term industrial projects. Earlier, banks like ICICI and other banks, IDFC, used to handle long-term infrastructure funding, but that is not there. NIIF has now been stated to be one of those banks, but I think we need a bigger bank in order to take this. The next point, sir, which I mentioned, was that certain companies like Blackstone have invested almost $20 billion last year into India on infrastructure projects. However, they have 11% of their capital invested from Hong Kong, and that there is a question mark whether that company would be considered from Chinese origin. According to me, it's an American company, but however, we need to clarify that in spite of the fact that they have some investments coming through Hong Kong, I don't know whether it's Chinese origin or the otherwise, but we need clarification because these companies are willing to put in $10–20 billion this year into infrastructure projects that we are now talking about. So, sir, we are here committed to you and to the Honorable Prime Minister on an Atmanirbhar Bharat. We will, as ASSOCHAM, garner all the companies which are coming into India and look forward to all these aspects of it. We are very grateful to you on the MSME sector, for which you had worked so hard, and we got a huge amount of funding commitment from the Finance Ministry of security which was given for bank lending. But sir, I'd like to point out that the banks are still not lending in that segment adequately enough, and there is a lot of slowness in terms of actually doling out that money to MSMEs. So I would request your intervention, sir, in that direction. So we are very excited, very happy with your statement and the action that you always take so promptly. So I am honored, sir, that you are on our platform this afternoon. Thank you very much for sparing time and coming up to us today.
Thank you, President. Thank you very much. Mr. Kant, a word of welcome from me. Thank you. Are you able to hear us, Mr. Kant? Mr. Kant, you're muted. So we're not able to hear you, sir. Harinder, is there a problem?
Sir, I'm checking it.
Nila, you're on mute.
But I think, yeah, I think it's unmuted now. You can speak, sir.
No, sir, we
I
can't
don't
hear
think.
you. No, sir. Harinder, can you please help?
Harinder, if you can just reset once, I think it might work.
Sir, I'm on call with the technical
Huh?
person.
नहीं, उनके वहाँ कंप्यूटर से अनम्यूट करना पड़ेगा.
No, it's unmuted here.
Yes, sir. We can hear you now, sir. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, sir.
We can hear you now, sir.
We are absolutely delighted to have you with us, sir.
Can you hear me now?
We have with us a huge panel representing multiple people from across the globe. Unfortunately, on the screen you can see 6. There are about 13, 14 panelists and a lot of people listening over this. Just to introduce you, most of you know Mr. Kant, and it's very not possible to actually introduce him. He's a person that almost anybody and everybody under the sun knows him now. And I have personally had a great interaction and worked with him under the Make in India banner when he was the secretary DIPP, and we did a lot of work across the globe. He's a man who's created the God's own country, and he is known for creating the ease of doing business campaign, which today has brought India and the FDI into India into the largest form the way it is. And going forward, I think is going to be this route that he's laid down for all of us, which is going to flower. And next 5 years to 10 years is what we're going to see the benefits of. Over to you, Mr. Kant. Thank you so
Deepak,
much.
let me start because I have another meeting to go to.
Yes, sir. Please, sir. You can start, sir. सर सुनाई दे रहा है सर, आप शुरू कीजिए.
Yeah.
Mr. Kant, you can start, please.
Sir, you can go ahead. If you can hear us, you can go ahead. We can hear you well.
Deepak, can I start?
Yes, sir, please.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's start. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be in the midst of all of you. It's a great pleasure to be in the midst of all of you, and I congratulate Assocham for having this meet. India currently has one of the most liberal FDI policies in the world, where foreign investments of up to 100% are permitted under the automatic route in most of the sectors of the economy. Foreign investment in only a few sectors of the economy are subject to restrictions in terms of approval requirements or foreign investment caps. We have recently opened up the defense sector also up to 74%. When you look at this policy in the context of what we've done for ease of doing business, where we've jumped up 79 positions in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking, we make the states compete with each other, we rank them. Our belief is that we are reinforcing our commitment towards the liberalization of FDI norms under what the Prime Minister has called the Atmanirbhar scheme. It is not about isolationism. It is not about anti-globalization. It is about strengthening Indian companies to compete in the global world. And the finance minister has unveiled multiple FDI-related reforms recently. I mentioned to you about the defense manufacturing sector, which shows the seriousness of the government in attracting FDI into India. This liberal FDI reforms has actually helped India reap exceptional benefits over the years. Our FDI has grown to, the recent figures show it's grown up to $65 billion. It's grown by about 16x in the last few years, and higher FDI inflows have been possible due to very, very liberal and attractive policy regime. I also wanted to tell you that 98% of this comes through the automatic route. The growth rate of FDI, if you look at FDI to GDP ratio has also shown a quantum jump, and it has consistently grown. As you know, if you were to compare India with many other countries, while India's FDI has grown in the last 5 years by about 66%, FDI across the world has fallen by about 13%. Now, if you look at the present scenario, the global political environment, ever since the outbreak of COVID-19, reports have claimed that vast amount of, while our numbers have grown, we've been able to manage our mortality and fatality rate very well, extremely well. And this has led to MNCs scrutinizing their strategy of over-dependence on other countries' supply chains. And many countries now want to reduce, many companies want to reduce their exposure to just one country. And therefore, the government of Japan, for instance, went to the extent of creating a special economic package for companies to shift their operations. And recently, the government of Japan has earmarked $2.2 billion US package for this purpose. But we feel that India must become inherently competitive. We must become an efficient manufacturing nation, and therefore we've taken a range of measures which will attract companies from across the world. We've become
No, sir, we lost you. We can't hear you. Mr. Kant, we just lost you. Harinder, the sound has gone off again.
So now, can you please speak?
Mr. Kant, could you please speak?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you.
So we can hear you. If you can hear us, can you continue?
Can you hear me, Deepak?
Yes, sir. Sir, we can hear you, sir. Sir, ये आप sir.
Deepak, we can't hear you.
Nilay, I think because of the bandwidth issue, he's not able to see us or hear us properly. So he has to hit another meeting. So he's just stepped out for that. He may join us back in a little while. So may request you to please continue the program.
Sorry, this is Deepak Bagla. Can that we all switch off our videos and only the speaker speaks, because that may take care of some of the bandwidth issues.
No.
I don't know if technology says that, but that's what I somehow feel might be easier.
Okay, let's do that. No problems.
Sure. Okay, can you hear me, Deepak?
Yes, I can.
So let's continue. And so what we wanted to do now is really go through our panelists for quick observation. What we wanted to do was to do this in two or three parts: a quick introduction and an overview from our panelists, and then we have a certain set of questions that we wanted to ask. And if time is there, we will take up certain questions that we are getting through the chat box. So if I could request Mr. D.K. Singh to go first, please. And so first of all, welcome to the Ministry of MSME. Over the last two weeks, if there's one term that we've heard more and more is MSME. We now have a definition which of MSME which all of us wanted for a long time. It's no longer small, but this is aspirational. And so just your observation on the opportunity that we have.
Mr. Singh, you'll have to unmute yourself, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Deepak,
Yes.
our General. I'm really very happy to to interact with all such senior members of the SOCM and other business body, and I'm really feeling privileged to have on this platform. I'm very new to this job, and I'm still learning the intricacies. Just 3 weeks old, but the moment I joined, actually already, it was almost middle of the COVID, and I joined in between, and the things are changing very, very fast in the MSME, I must admit. And with the change of the definition, there is a lot of aspiration, which you rightly pointed out. And now the definition has increased the investment limit up to 50 crore and the turnover to 250 crore. So now many of the industries which were not earlier categorized as MSME will fall in the definition of the MSME, and they will be entitled for different incentives which is available to the other MSMEs. The focus the government has given on this sector is tremendous, and this push by the government has created a lot of aspiration, lot of hope, and of course there is a lot of demand has also increased. There is a lot of requests are coming to government. The government has taken 3 steps. One, that there is some problem in the working capital. For that, actually, government has announced for 20% additional collateral free advance by the banks. The second is that some of the units have gone into the NPA. For that, subordinate debt scheme has been announced. We are formulating the guidelines. We expect that the guidelines will be issued very shortly, and it will be placed in the public domain. We have already completed our consultation with the regulatory authorities, and it is just a matter of time that we come forward with these guidelines. The third is the fund of fund, where there will be mother fund and daughter fund, and it will be working in the framework of the SEBI, and where the intention is to participate as equity from the government and provide an opportunity for the small companies to escape from the MSMEs to a bigger company. Ultimately, it will happen. Ultimately, it will happen that some of the companies will grow fast and they will become big, and they will become very big companies also in, say, 3 to 5 years' time. Now, our MSME sector has a network of offices. We have development institutes in all the states. We have technology centers who are linked to the different industries, and based on the industry requirement, they provide high skilling training to the manpower. And then government is also investing in opening new technology centers. We have with the help of World Bank, there is assistance to set up 20 technology centers, and there is a proposal to set up 100 extension centers. Idea is to have a high-end skilling and match these skilled laborers to the SME sectors. And in this process, there is a requirement. Most of the states have now started with the mapping of the skill requirement and to link with those activities. Now, one of the other the initiative which government has taken to announce a portal, Champions Portal. Champion is a acronym. The full form stands for Creation and Harmonious Application of Modern Processes for increasing the output and national strength. This portal was launched about 3 weeks before, and already we have the intention was threefold. One is to address the grievances of the MSME sector. The second was to identify the opportunities and to link them. The third was to how to encourage the MSME sector. We have already received more than 50,000 response on this portal, and their grievances or their queries has been responded by our team. We are all the state governments, we have opened a 24 hours control room type of thing where the queries can be resolved. Most of the queries relate to the banking systems, banking issues, and our officers are able to talk to the concerned banks and try to resolve those issues. But still, as our president pointed out, that there are certain issues, in the banking channel, which Department of Financial Services are looking on those issues and trying to sort out those issues. One more aspect I would like to say and inform that our government e-marketplace GEM platform is working exceedingly well. Even during lockdown, most of our MSMEs have got orders. About 50,000 orders has been received by them during this lockdown period. And I would also like to cite our strength of MSME by saying that earlier India was not producing any PPE kit and other N95. Now, in such a short span of time, we are self-sufficient. There is no scarcity of a PPE kit. Now there are more than 11,000 suppliers of COVID-related products registered on the GEM platform. And this GEM platform has created business from government more than 1,000 crores. There is a demand for hand sanitizers, demand for hospital beds, ICU beds, medical equipments, medical devices, and this platform is working very nicely, and we are trying to encourage our units to get registered on this platform so that procurement by the government agency can be increased. This procurement, not only the central government, but the state government. There are many PSU in the state governments. There are local bodies in the state government. Everybody can purchase from this GEM portal, and it is increasing. It is increasing it as a reliable platform for the supply chain. So we are very upbeat, and we are looking for. I would also like to say that our budget, how the ministry's budget, almost 20% of the budget is going for technology, efficiency related things like lean manufacturing, zero JED schemes, and there are so many other schemes, and then almost 30% is all going to the credit related support, and balance is for the capacity building, etc., etc. So government is really giving a very push, and we are feeling very confident that this sector will really will be the real powerhouse of the economy, and it will grow exponentially. So with these thoughts, I will like to conclude and convey my thanks to the SHM and congratulate SHM for organizing this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. And we will come back to you a little later. But you're right. For global supply chains to exist in any country, the MSME have to be integral to that. And the quality centers that you've talked about, the Z scheme you've talked about, I think those are great. But I would also say, and I'm sure people are going to talk about it, demand is where the most important thing is. And I think recent decisions have been very, very good for creating demand. But Deepak, if I can come to you before I, come to my other panelists, and Deepak will request you for a brief comment to start with. What are you seeing? We've been talking about this, that India is actually going to get a lot of investment. If there's one person who can answer that question for us, is really you, because you are part of Invest India, you drive Invest India. So what's really happening?
Thank you, Nile. First, I must congratulate SHM and Primus Partners for doing this. Deepak, Dr. Hirandandani, you've got an excellent team. You really, and Deepak, you've just shaken it all up. And Nile, you're always an excellent partner. Excellent. Thank you very much. Let me just make a few random comments. And since you started with FDI, let me start with FDI. We are on day 88 of the lockdown, the most unprecedented ever in human history. So one, I thought I'll share with you some thoughts of my experience and my team's experience during these past 88 days. But before that, since you asked FDI, let me just give you a few statistics. Year 1920 or 2020 March 31st closing this year, India's FDI was $74 billion. The highest FDI we ever got in our history. Now, let me tell you, more important than this number, global FDI last year went down by 7%. Our share went up by 18%. So why am I saying this? The reason why I'm telling you this is that I think what COVID has done, that it has amplified and catalyzed underlying existing trends. The first trend is what Dr. Kant mentioned about. You all remember de-risking was a core part of our business strategies. Everybody is now realized that that is now going to become the primary part which we had all forgotten. That means there's going to be reshoring of businesses, reshoring of supply chains closer to where the markets are. And we all know that the market opportunity provided by India is unmatched, not now, but also for the next 50 years. We all know that. So for me, that is a natural movement which I see getting amplified and which I see getting catalyzed. And why am I saying that? My company itself, Invest India, currently is hand-holding 570 investment proposals with a total indicated investment of $166 billion, of which 20 billion has already come. But let me tell you what happened, especially in the past 45 days. The number of business requests which I used to get has gone up 3 times. In fact, business plan today is at a point where I'm going to do a 3x of my team, which is currently at 180, to close to 500 in the next 12 months. That is just to give you an indication of the kind of business requests I'm getting now. And let me tell you, what are these kind of business interests? These are no longer interests saying, show us the opportunity in India. These are interests which are saying, please show us where the land is. Please get us, how do we get these approvals? We want it now. The second thing, the requests are coming not just from the big boys, the global 500. I'm seeing a large spurt of these requests coming from that middle segment. And what is more interesting, if I had looked at it 5 years ago, the middle segment was always looking for a local partner. Today, these people also have the ability or the confidence that they can come to India by themselves. The average ticket size has gone up, and 2 more interesting facts, actually 3. If I drew up the pie chart of which countries I was getting this investment from 5 years ago when we started Invest India, you would have said close to 40%, as Mukesh is going to be on the line, would be approximately the US. Today, when I draw that pie chart, and 40% one country, and I would say total 80% would have been from 5 countries. Today, when I draw that pie chart, US may have gone up in absolute terms, but in relative terms, it's down to a third, if not less. Today, 80% of my investments are going to come from over 12 countries. So one, investment destination is getting broad-based. 2, again, when I drew a pie chart of the sectors where it was coming in, 8 sectors accounted for 80% of my investment. Today, when I draw that pie chart, it is 17 sectors which are accounting for that investment. And again, 5 years ago, 6 state governments accounted for 85% of that investment. Today, I have 11 state governments which are there, and 11 and 6 more counting to join in. This game is now getting broad-based where India is concerned. Now, some very quick random points. There was a discussion, Mr. Hiranandani, you were talking about the land bank. That is completely in the works. In the next month or 2, you will start seeing a platform which is being transparent and out there, which will tell you where land is available. You can click on it. You can get to know the size, is it freehold, what is the costing, how do you apply for it? You can be sitting anywhere in the world. Not just that, The industrial clusters are going to be mapped and they are going to be rated. And in fact, we are currently working with a number of industrial clusters to bring them up the curve so that there is plug and play available. We are all now here from within the country. We all know the unprecedented reforms which have been announced in the past 45 days. Nilay, sorry, can I take 5 more minutes? I know you had given me 2 minutes.
Yeah, please go. But that's okay. That 2 minutes happened long time back. That's okay.
Do you want me to stop? I can come back later.
No, this is good. Let's go.
Now, what was it? The entire world knew the opportunity which was in India. Two things have happened which the business was looking for, and why this spurt of new business opportunities. One, they wanted that ease of doing business, and two, they wanted the access to this opportunity. With the digitization which has happened in the past 5 years and the India stack you have of 1 billion people with a mobile, billion people to a bank, billion people with a unique identity, you have any company coming in today and being able to access the big opportunity of India and at a cost of acquisition which is lower than the global average. So that huge digitization effort of the past 60 months of this government is helping us not only in taking care of this pandemic, which is huge by itself, but also in being a big point and attracting that business. And now what has happened? Look at it. Unprecedented changes and announcements in the ease of doing business and being able to start your business. You have an empowered group of secretaries, which will be a single window where will be a fast clearance of all projects. You have state governments which are giving everything on a single window with a single application, deemed approvals. You get them in X period of time, all approvals within 30 days or whatever that their time be. And you know what's interesting? It's the only place in the world where the government is penalizing its officer on their individual account for any delay of approval beyond the period. Nowhere else in the world is that there. This is happening in India. The thing is, we don't talk about it enough. And it's not just happening in one state. What happens in India is when the precedent is set, you suddenly start seeing every other state government adopting it on a fast course basis. Today, I have 18 state governments which are working on a single window at their level. So the land bit is being taken care of very fast. These entry level barriers and issues which were there have been taken care of. The tax issues which have been pointed have been taken care of. I will speak about the MSME segment a little later, but we just had that, to my mind, is going to propel the growth of India. Because the other underlying trend which has been amplified globally and catalyzed is the amazing ability of Indian business to pivot and change its existing business models in a nimble manner. You spoke about PPEs. Today, we are ready to export PPEs. On the 30th of March, you did not have a single PPE. The committee was desperately trying to see where to import it from. Today, you have 450,000 a day. Existing business models changed and pivoted, and this is what is going to drive the India of tomorrow. Our entire 65 million MSMEs. That is going to be our engine of growth. Thank you, Nilay. I know I've gone far ahead. I'll come back.
No, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And honestly, if I had money, I would have been investing more. I mean, really, it's really nice to see. And I think you're right. We don't talk more about what we do, and very often the headlines don't miss the finer points. But it's always good to look at the perspective from the other side. And maybe what I'll do is over the next 2-3 panelists, I'm going to bring in people from outside the country, starting with Mukesh, to bring in a perspective, because Deepak, you spoke about large consumer market. Um, so let me introduce Dr. Mukesh Aghi. He is no stranger to India, has been driving tirelessly and taking efforts to drive investments into India from the US. He's a president and CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. So Mukesh, if I could ask you, Deepak spoke about India being a large market, so is US. We've often spoken about our advantage, but what are you seeing? How do we make the India-US relationship better? And you and I have spoken about it. Very often we've spoken about there are opportunities, but we need to close it. So how do we make that happen? Mukesh, over to you.
Dr. Mukesh is showing offline right now.
Okay. So sorry. So why, can you just check while we getting Dr. Mukesh back on the panel, if I could put that question to Mr. Swing Tung, who's there with us. Mr. Swing Tung is the chief representative of SIPA South Korea. Mr. Tang, you've seen how India has announced large program for electronics manufacturing, and that's one area Korea is very, very large in. What are you seeing? How the opportunity to be? Go ahead, Mr. Chang.
Yes. Nice to meet you. I'm a SEPA Chungcheongnam-do province, the Economic Promotion Agency of the representative. So the government of India has taken various capabilities to promote electronics manufacturing in the country with the target of achieving positive net export by 2025. I would like to congratulate the government of being proactive and taking measures to the domestic manufacturing. The currently share the electronics manufacturing sector account for 2.5% of India's GDPs and employ over 30 million people. To increase jobs and further strengthen the capability of the Indian domestic manufacturers. Under Make in India programs, we urge the Korean economics in this sector to collaborate, share the technical know-how and work closely with the Indian manufacturers and Make in India for the world. Electronic productions out in India increased from $29 billion in 2014 to 15 to $70 billion in 2018 to 19. India emerged as the second largest manufacturer of mobile phone in the world in 2018. The production output of the mobile devices has gone up from about $3 billion in 2014 to 15 to $30 billion in 2019 to 2020. All these figures indicate that India has already witnessed its growth in the last 5 years, and it can achieve and generate in economic value of 100 to 130 billion dollars in 2025. So as we know, India's economics industry is limited mostly to assembling, and India is still heavily dependent on imports of primary and critical components such as printed circuit board, modems, routers, and other telecom equipment components, etc. Currently, the manufacture of some of the key products that India imports, such as semiconductors, displays, and capital-intensive electrical equipment, may not be possible soon as it requires large stable sources of clean water and electricity and require big upfront investment. The high logistics cost and electricity could be of challenges as well. However, India can start producing less sophisticated components, so to innovate it and help the industry become more efficient in India. India can partner with South Korea for the same. The recommendations, product design, research and development, technology transfer, digitization of manufacturing operations and management should be enhanced in cooperation with Korea, SMS, etc. The road shops and joint promotional event in Korea would be a great start to discuss the investment strategies and promoted Indian incentives and schemes and India as a promising manufacturer destinations. So I'm very optimistic about the Indian market, and I'll be helping bring technologies and resources to the India through our SEPA project, involving different stakeholders of the Korean government to business associations. I truly appreciate and praise the Indian government for introducing investor-friendly policies which will further encourage the Korean companies to come to India. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Tang. Um, I'm just wondering if Dr. Mukesh Aghi is back with us. Dr. Aghi, if you're back with us, I was at that point of time talking about India-US relationship, and Deepak spoke about India being a large market. At the same time, there are challenges. Just wanted to get your experience on how you see the India-US relationships moving forward.
Well,
Yes,
Nelia,
yes, of course.
good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, Mukesh.
All right. Well, I think you have to look at the scenario from a broader picture rather than just purely an economic and trade. I think the current stress point between US and China, the fissure is going to get deeper and broader. And there is discussion going in the boardroom in the US as to what is the China plus strategy at the moment. And what we're seeing with the US company is if they openly say they're going to move out of China, they get harassed in China, and a lot of issues are brought into those US companies. So US companies are quietly defining, building what is the China plus strategy. Now, that does not mean India automatically becomes a choice. India has to compete with Vietnam, with Cambodia, Thailand, and also with the US, because a lot of companies are moving back to the US also from China. So I think what does India need to do, beside what all the panelists have talked about, the land reform, labor reform, and ease of doing business, I think one of the key things we have to look at, which is much, much broader, is geopolitically, we have aligned ourselves with Quad, which is Japan, Australia, US, and India. These are the four countries which are patrolling the Indian Ocean. So the question I like to basically address to the government of India is, why cannot we build a trade pact, a FTA between the four nations? What it does is basically it moves goods, services all across without any hindrance. And it also, because I think if you're going to drive a geopolitical pact, then you also have to basically focus on a geopolitical economic pact also, and that's where FTA becomes very critical. Finally, I like to add is that you have roughly $2.5 trillion of capital lying, looking for investment in the United States, from the United States. And I think India becomes a tremendous opportunity. There are a couple of things which we need to make sure it happens. One is policy predictability. Companies are saying when government changes the policy on a regular basis, and classic example would be is what happened with Walmart investment in Flipkart. Policy changed 2 weeks later. Companies invested in Andhra Pradesh, government changed, they canceled all the contract. Companies, boardroom, you cannot go justify the local politics which impacts long-term investments. Companies are looking for 20 to 30-year investment. So one thing is very critical, policy predictability is important. Policy transparency is important, because what happens is as you build laws, as you build policy, it is always good to look at what is a transparent process, because we are a democracy in India. So I think if we can just focus on those two aspects, then ease of doing business, contract sanctity will come through. So India is still a tremendous opportunity. Companies are still looking at India very, very carefully, and you can see investment coming in. And as the geopolitical shift happens, you will see a much more focus from the US side to move supply chain into India. Nelia, over to you.
No, absolutely, Mukesh, you're absolutely right. And I think the proposition you're talking about, a broad-based trade pact which is also very, very strategic from a geopolitical sense, makes eminent sense. And I'm sure this is something that the government is going to look at very seriously. Mukesh, if I could just have a follow-up question with you. There are many companies. Very often, all the focus of investment seems to be focused around large companies. But as many other speakers have spoken, increasingly the investment size is going to be smaller. Large number of companies are going to be doing it. Are we doing enough to reform to help smaller companies and not just the large companies, not just the Apples of the world, not just the Foxconn of the world, but the smaller US company, a mom and pop, SME, which is large enough in US?
I think one is the intent and effort to bring ease of doing reform itself, and then the other factor is execution on the ground level. And there's a big gap at the moment from that perspective. But I think more important is the messaging. We need to be able to build a sense of confidence as to why India is a better place than for SMEs in the US to go to Mexico or to go to Vietnam itself. I don't think we're doing enough there to basically tell them why India is a better place to come in, not only from a cost perspective, but also from a market access perspective. So I think more effort needs to come in. But Nile, I also want to add that if you look at, we are missing institutional investors coming into India. When you look at the large institutional investors, which are looking for 20, 30 years long-term investment, they still are reluctant to come in. And I think you have to focus both on the high end and also on the SMEs itself to make sure they come in, because they are the job creators. And the other factor which I like to add is the startups. What we are seeing, and we have built a platform. India is the third largest startup market in the world. And what we are seeing is that Indian startups, and we will build a platform, SPF, in the US. And as a pilot, we have brought in 6 startups to start going after the US market. And what we're seeing is the average cost or job salary they're producing in the US by creating new jobs is $175,000. The median income per person they are hiring in the US. And for every person they hire in the US, they hire 10 people back in India. So it's a win-win value proposition on startups. So I think we need to look at institutional investors, we need to look at SMEs, and definitely very much on the startup scenario also.
Absolutely. And thanks, Mukesh. I actually wanted to shift a little bit of focus from infrastructure and manufacturing to from manufacturing to infrastructure, and I wanted to request if I could speak to Matsuto-san, who's also the chief representative of JICA. JICA is one of the largest official development assistance loan program in India, and India has a huge opportunity for driving investments into infrastructure. As I said, 1.4 trillion of investment proposed in the next 5 years. How is that working when you look from a JICA angle? What else do we need to do? Matsuto-san, if you can hear me, and I'll request you to be unmuted and for your comments. Mr. Matsuto-san?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Good evening, and Sahiko Namasute. Thank you for inviting me today's event. And I understand that under the current situation, that the economic activities are still limited. And as a development cooperation agency, we have been working with the central government to create a new emergent program in health sector, social protection, and the MSE support. And we'd like to maybe realize such kind of like a new cooperation as soon as possible. And recently, in response to the question to the Japanese companies present in India, about 80% of them have experienced a decline in the sales. And among them, the 90% of companies say that their supply chain is hindered. In addition, the 60% of the companies say that they are experiencing the cash flow problems. This is a quite common issues, not only for Japanese companies, but also other Indian company and foreign companies. And therefore, in the short term, it is really important for companies to be able to resume business activities smoothly. So in the field of the JICA activities, like you know that we are financing a lot of the large-scale infrastructure project all over India. And still at the project site, there are a problem about the lack of the workers and also the lack of the equipment. The executive agency or contractor cannot procure the necessary equipment from the especially foreign countries. And today, I happened to visit to the Ambience Mall in Basant Kunji, and I just dropped in the one computer shop. And I asked them that I want to buy the one just iPad, the equipment, and I just asked the shopper, so do you have a stock? They said no. They are waiting the new the machine from China. So that's the situation, I believe. And from a slightly broader perspective, Japanese companies operating in other countries are starting diversifying their supply chain. I believe that Amitabh Kant introduced this like a new budget of Japanese government to support the Japanese company to shift to other countries. So in this connection, to announce a really attractive support package, including like a tax incentives to the foreign companies, can make India more attractive destination of the investment. So it is a very, very good time that say the central government or state government will demonstrate some like a kind of the very good support package to the foreign companies. This is one good input to invite more investment. And I want to share one thing that the major concern of the Japanese companies who just maybe returned to Japan during the lockdown period is that they are concerned about the health and the medical system here in India. In other words, it is very necessary to ensure the like a safe and healthy lives for the employees for smooth corporate activities. So it means that to ensure the good living condition and the lifeline system is also one of the key factors for these companies to choose destination. And to be honest to you, in the past maybe 7 years, I have been working in India, and there are some gap of the understanding and the recognition between the foreign companies and the Indian people about the degree of satisfaction of the investment. I mean that say Indian side, maybe you say that the circumstance in India is really better than before. It's now very enough. But many foreign companies, people complain the situation. So if you don't have to maybe fill the gap of this two aside, the situation may be still no change. And we try to facilitate to fill the gap by providing some like a new cooperation program in some specific state like Tamil Nadu or Gujarat. We can call it investment promotion program. This is a mixture of the policy, the set, and also the supporting the infrastructure project. And through such kind of like a facilitation, we hope that the two sides can say reach closer and closer. And finally, let me emphasize one thing. Maybe you know very well that using the current crisis as one opportunity to promote the industry is a very important idea. And Japan, after the oil crisis of the 1970s, has really strengthened the industry through the diversifying its energy resources, including the energy saving effort, and made the company more resilient to external shocks. And through such efforts, companies improve their competitiveness, and finally it can connect to the economic booming in 80s. So to recognize this like a crisis as one very good opportunity is very important. Not only the government level, but also the maybe private company level. So this may be kind of like an immune system of society, and facing trouble, tackling with it, and being stronger. And maybe we need to change a sense of crisis into energy of survival and development. This is very important. But I hope that say you are in a very good stage to go ahead to achieve the more the growth and the prosperity of the economy. Thank you so much.
Really important. I think one of the points that you mentioned, which is really important, is about we don't necessarily look at healthcare and education as an important determinant for investment, but increasingly in high-tech industry and industries which is about senior people, that becomes very, very critical. And I think it's a very important point that you made. Let me just move on, just taking that theme forward. And Mr. Kumar, just give me a minute more and I'll come back to you. But if I can come to Mr. Bikramjit Singh Sahni. Mr. Sahni is a Padam Shri and is the president of International Chamber of Commerce and a member of the managing committee of ASSOCHAM. He's also a successful entrepreneur and chairman of the Sun Group. Mr. Sahni, my question to you is, what's the long-term effect on the supply chain is currently difficult to predict, right? We're talking about it, but it's really difficult to predict. But two major changes are anticipated going forward: vertical integration and geographical diversification. From your vantage point, what can India bring to the table with regards to these two trends, and what do we need to do to make our positioning better?
Thank you, Mr. Nalai. First, I congratulate Mr. Deepak Sood and Mr. Niranjan Nandani, ASSOCHAM, for putting such a thought-provoking brainstorming on opportunities and strategies. So as we say, opportunities, of course, there has been a lot of disruptions of corona pandemic, but at the same time, as Mr. Mukesh was just saying, it has brought us some opportunities in terms of dichotomy between US, China, and many companies trying to move out of China. As far as your question is concerned, in India, I feel we have seen that even last year, we had an FDI investment of over $50 billion. So we have ecosystem, we have skilled manpower, as we know. India is a big size market, and we have schemes like Atmanirbhar, Make in India, and the lowest tax rates I would flag in the recent budget, which was flagged for the new manufacturing companies. But having said that, there are many limiting factors, as we have pending land reforms, as it was said, we have pending labor reforms, which are very critical for a foreign investor, and tax reform, as it was earlier said just now, on the policy inconsistency. So I think an investor on a long-term basis would like to have a consistent policy framework. And the last they would like to have is any kind of retrospective taxes. Recently, two examples were given. One was Walmart and Andhra Pradesh government. I think something needs to be done to have a consistent policy and not kind of retrospective. As we all know, we have old baggage even from the UAE sovereign fund on us, which we have been engaging to issues of Etisalat and the MR, MGF deals and so many deals. And then, of course, we require efficient logistics, as it was said. That is very, very important for an industrial zone to take place, or a big industry or investors to come in. And I also agree with Mr. Hiranandani on infrastructure banks, because we hardly have any long-term lending on institutions. But having said that, it is very heartening to note as Mr. Deepak Bagla said, that we have now diversified 12 countries, investment from 12 countries, into 17 sectors and 11 states. So that is very heartening, but still I feel, despite the fact that India have opened up defense sector to 74%, because we have billions of dollars, and we have been running this defense offset program for the import substitution of defense, but somehow it has not taken off because of the procurement policy, because still I understand that the indigenous manufacturers have to still compete in the tenders. So some sort of, until MOD will make a offtake plan, because a foreign investor, for example, in the mega defense sector, which can bring trillions of dollars of investment, will require a guaranteed offtake of its products. So many US companies, many other giants, European companies, German companies, I've seen, because we have been involved in the civil offset, but the offset policy has not taken off, because so this is one of the deterrent in getting FDI into the defense sector. So India will have to, I think, compete a lot with countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and of course we need long-term security, long-term insulation for the foreign investment. This in brief, I feel, is the plus point, and these 5-6 constraints we have, which needs to be addressed to attract FDI in post-COVID, post-corona. Thank you, Nilay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sani, and I think you're absolutely right. I think we will need to compete, and I think in any sector and every sector that India and Indian companies have competed, we've always come out top. So I'm sure this is something that we're going to work on. But let me take this back to Mr. Kumar. Mr. Kumar is the president and CEO of the Executive Board of Indian American International Chamber of Commerce. I believe the only Indian American to work with 6 presidents. You and I were speaking some time back, Mr. Kumar, and you spoke about your own personal experience having worked with India over the years and what we really need to do going forward. Mr. Kumar, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Verma, and I'm glad that Mr. Devendra Kumar is here. In 2007, January, I was asked by one of the cabinet members from India who was visiting in Washington to help U.S. Small Business Administration to come to an MOU with MSME in India, and I was invited to speak at the AmCham in New Delhi. At that time, I talked to Ramesh Bajpai, and he facilitated the signing of the MOU between USSBA and the MSME department. I think that has expired. I was talking to Jovita Carranza, SBA administrator, a couple of months back when I was with her, and I told her that India and SBA should regroup and sign an MOU. And we have a lot of things. Let me get to first the points that I want to make. I don't want to repeat what Mukesh said and other people have said. The software industry will flourish, and the greatest advantage is in the pharmaceutical industry for India, because China has monopolized the supply chain and India can beat it. I was interviewed by the pharma board about a month back, and the whole interview is on our website. If you're interested, you can look at it. And we also have opportunities in manufacturing, but it's not a given. We have to earn it, like Mukesh said. And agriculture, agro industries, defense, aerospace, and other things. Our chamber has been lobbying very heavily, and we helped the US pass the Strategic Trade Agreement, STA1, between US and India, which opened the doors for procurement without going through the normal process. and which put India in the same NATO standards as that one. And we have also helped with US MCA, the trade agreement. We should have one agreement like that between India and US, and we are very close. And I'm so glad our the Indian Prime Minister and our President are working out very well as a team. And we have a lot of opportunities. And our chamber was invited. Our chamber was the only one which was invited to for the kickoff of the White House on the opportunity zone, through which United States will invest $5 trillion over the next 20 years. And this is mainly for the SMEs. And if SMEs in India associate with some of the smaller companies in the United States, we can certainly assist on that. And there's a big opportunity and for investments and for going through the various processes, we can also help. And but let me come back to something that is very important. There are a lot of opportunities in healthcare, agro industries, and and also the doors will open because of the new agreement on purchase of certain helicopters and other things between US and India. That will open supply chain for India as well. But we are faced with some of the problems. Let me get into that one. China is an issue that we all have to be concerned about. China is working on 4 fronts to accomplish its objectives: financial, legal, media, and psychological warfares. It uses twist systems operating with respective countries and use them to their advantage. Such tactics are adopted by their military doctrine. For example, racism is a touchy subject in the United States, and Chinese will use the racism as an advantage by launching psychological, media, and warfare. Having said this, that's a negative part, but having said this, Chinese also spell crisis with 2 words: danger and opportunity. I'm looking at the opportunity side of it. Our software industry will flourish. Greatest advantage we have is the younger generation and well-educated group of people, and we can really put our efforts to of course the software industry is not going to go down overnight, and there are some issues. We have almost 225,000 students in the United States, and actually I have been helping a lot of students with their visa issues, as well as some of the difficulties that they are going through. Our chamber is individually and collectively we are helping them. And this H-1B visa, in fact, the Hindu newspaper published last year when I was in India, they interviewed me and published that article. But there are advantages of this, the restrictions that they're putting. The chamber is working very hard on this H-1B visas. In fact, last 2 weeks back, I sent a letter to Ambassador Taranjit Sandhu, who is a very good ambassador, who is a good friend of mine. I sent him a letter saying the chamber is willing to help the embassy in any way that we can. We will work with the administration and other groups. And the DFC has approved over $350 million worth of loans, and they are also going to open a new office in New Delhi. Have they done it or not yet? And I don't know about that. But on a good note, India was elected to the United Nations Security Council for a term of 2 years as a non-permanent member basis. We have been working on the permanent basis for India to become permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. In fact, in 2018, Vice President Pence, he publicly stated that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I think that when Mukesh Aghi was in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, he had organized that meeting through the chamber, and Vice President Pence said President Trump is going to support India joining United Nations as part of the member of the Security Council. And we are working very hard to push for that one. and any help that you guys can give us, we will be happy to work with you. And we are going to establish offices in Africa, Latin America,
Mr.
Europe,
Kumar,
and yeah.
Sorry to come in between, but
Yeah.
just in the interest of time, I just wanted to. I think the point that you're making are absolutely right. I think we've got a huge diaspora and ability to work together. There are many areas, and we really look forward from an ASSOCHAM to work with the association. But at this point of time, I did want to bring in Tanmay, if that's okay with
Can
you.
Can I request you one more thing, Mr. Verma?
Sure.
Mr. Verma,
Yeah, please.
I have to go to. I have a meeting with the mayor in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta. I have a meeting with the mayor, and I have to speak at an event on the Juneteenth about the African American growth. And if you have any questions, please ask me, because I have to leave, unfortunately.
No, that's okay. We'll let you go. I'm sure you'll convey that Mayor Bottoms is doing a fantastic job in Atlanta. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tanmay, if I can come to you, you and I have worked over the last 15, 20 years, seen the transformation of India. You also are now the group corporate affairs for Tata Sons. India is really, truly global organization, a multinational. One of the things that people keep talking about is India, and there are databases which show that India still uses more high-value inputs to produce its exports. So we're not really adding value. Are there structural challenges? What's your view on what we need to do to really get manufacturing into India?
Heard a whole. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tanmay, we can hear you now.
Thank you, Nilay, for the opportunity, and thank you to ASSOCHAM for organizing this webinar. There's many divergent views that we have heard so far, but it's always very motivating to hear Mr. Amitabh Kant, albeit briefly, that we heard him today, and of course the efforts that have been put in by Deepak Bagla. And he being one of my customers from the past, I know the kind of passion with which he drives inward investment into the country. And to basically be very direct to your question, I think historically we have, as a country, taken a very easy route of not delving deep into investments that we had to make for high value products, which had to value add into our overall production chain to be able to not only address the domestic market but also to export. So it has been a cumulative path of what should I say, the easy path that has been taken thus far, and therefore you kind of describe the situation that we are in at this moment. But if I was just to look at the opportunities and strategies that India needs to adopt to address the post-pandemic commercial opportunities that are presented to India or are arising out of the global scenario, I would say that we would like to take a step back and look at our urban infrastructural capabilities. What have we built? Have we built livable cities? Do we have access to healthcare, as very correctly the JICA country representative mentioned, as he observed? Do we have adequate decongestion measures that we have taken? Look at the labor migration flight that took place. Stability of labor is one of the key factors that everybody who invests looks at. Do we have a database of our skills as to where they are? For example, years ago, we had built for the Overseas Indian Affairs Ministry a complete database of all Indians who have gone abroad to work. Similarly, can we now build a labor database of skills that are available within the country and make it available digitally to people who can then source such skills? Where are they concentrated? Can we connect post companies which have post food processing capabilities to our geographical regions where there is plenty of such things available? How can we get out of this very traditional mandi kind of dependence of farmers who then get locked in to some of these locations, and maybe through debt or through market access are very constricted in terms of their ability to get the best remunerative prices? I think those are some of the things that we really now need to look at as opportunities for India. For example, are we going to clean up all our rivers which have been contaminated? Because one of the things for manufacturing is the free access and ready availability of industrial water, for example. So those are some of the aspects of, I think, the opportunities that are presented to us as a country. And I think those are the areas that, for example, de-slumification of cities is another thing that comes to mind. Are we going to really put more and more people into cities that are already bursting, or are we going to create very specific industrial clusters far away from these cities so that you are able to decongest the population? And are we going to concentrate and create industrial corridors which specializes in a vertical industry type, or are we going to have an assorted lot in an industrial zone? I think those are some of the choices that are presented to us now as an opportunity. And those are the things that I think will enable India to attract a lot more investments, not just coming from abroad, but even the development of Indian entrepreneurs. That's an equal opportunity with finance access, with all the banks sitting on a heap of cash waiting to be disbursed into potential and viable business propositions. The last point that I would like to make is that we can keep talking about inward investments, but until India is able to sign off FTA agreements globally with Latin America, with Africa, which is a huge opportunity according to me, but very little is being looked at from India to Africa. Whereas having worked in East Africa, I know the kind of increasing confidence that they have about things coming from India. So those are the opportunities that I think we should look at, because one of the reasons why, for example, Samsung invested 3 times more in Vietnam as compared to India was because Vietnam has the FTA agreements with all the major economies of the world, and therefore global market access is one of the very important criteria that companies are going to look at when they come and invest in India. So I think we are really sitting on a post-COVID clean slate kind of an India 2.0 opportunity. And if we are able to play the ball, if we are able to bring development to states which have so far lagged behind and help decongest some of the states that have already reached the brim in terms of urban choke points, or whether it is healthcare access, whether it is public transportation, the kind of urban mess that we have. These are, I think, opportunities that we sit on as a country, which we will have to really think deep and look at rebuilding the new India for the future. Thank you, Nilay.
No, absolutely, Tanmay. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the amount of investment that has on and needed in urban can attract not just domestic but foreign investment. Smart city is clearly a case in point that we have seen so many investments coming from Taiwan, small companies looking at the market in India. We've heard Vietnam a number of times, and therefore I'm going to come to Sunny. Sorry for coming to you late, Sunny. Just because you were the youngest in the group, I took that liberty. But Sunny is the division head for investment strategy consulting at Nomura Research Institute. Sunny, there's been a study that has been done by Nomura, not necessarily your division, but Nomura, which talks about, which has been often quoted, wherein 56 companies moved their production out of China. Vietnam emerged as the preferred destination. We want to understand what really is the insight coming from it, and also another point, if I can pick up with you, you've spoken about needing a policy predictability, something that has been spoken a number of times also. So do you want to just talk about these 2 points, please?
Thank you, first of all, bringing me in. Yes, being the youngest member, I'm more privileged to be part of this forum. And I think just to quickly club my views as well as my introduction. So my name is Sunny Goel, and I'm representing Nomura Research Institute Consulting India office, and I'm heading investment strategy team here. Also, let me point out one thing, that because of our grassroots from Japan, my views will be a bit inspired from Japan-India investment corridor. So I think first, let me tell you something that looking at most of the activities and reform India has been focusing on in last few years, I'm extremely positive that in next 5 to 7 years, if we keep up the same pace, then only from Japan we can secure what we did in last 2 decades. That is, I think almost $30 billion of FDI can be secured in next 5 to 7 years, which is making it almost 10% equivalent to $330 billion of FDI target, which we are talking here in today's forum. But having said so, I think it will not happen just like that. I feel we have already done quite a lot to make macro factors attractive about Indian market, and whole world is recognizing that. But now we need to scrutinize our micro level operation, and this is the time that we re-strategize our approach by designing maybe sector-wise policies. Of course, some of them are already there in place, but we need to increase awareness, and that is why I think second part should be we need a very strong communication strategy now. We need to really change perception of foreign investors, especially from Asian countries like Japan. We are talking here, of course, Korea is also there uh, for doing business in India. Now, another part here is I think we need to build a domino effect. So not just focusing on manufacturing sector, but we need to club it with service sector. And at this point of time, I would like to step into the report which you referred. Uh, First of all, that report has been made by Nomura Securities, but I'm fully aware of this report. I've read through each and every detail. So I think, of course, findings are very interesting, not in the favor of India, whereby we saw only 3 investments out of 56 to India. But there are 2 ways to, look at the things. One way is that we just go by number. Three out of 56, which is nothing. But we need to we keep on talking about ecosystem, but do we really have ecosystem in place? So second way is the way which I'm looking at things right now. I think this is very, very opportunistic one. These findings are very opportunistic one for us. Till date, we were waiting that when China will get saturated, when will we get our chance? When will get India its chance to expand? I think now is the time. Now is the time that we can have fruits from these countries. And my suggestion there would be, if we compare our country with Southeast Asia, no doubt, if you check any parameter, any ranking, we are far ahead than Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, for sure. But what are these parameters? I think these are mostly macro level parameters, like long-term government stability, political risk. We are far, far ahead of these countries. But where we are lacking. Now, if a Japanese company, again, sorry, pardon me that I'm a bit biased towards the Japan side because I've been working more there. So now let's say a Japanese company understand that on competitive point of view, India and Vietnam are equal. So where should I go first? If I go to Vietnam, probably it will take maximum 5 to 10 days or 15 days to set up my shop, or at least to get that first go ahead. But even today, despite of ease of doing business rank improving again and again, we are not able to provide that kind of a smooth, entry point to our counterparts, to our investors. So maybe I think I have 4 suggestions here. First is creating domino effect. So when I say creating domino effect, what exactly it is? I think in order to provide manufacturing, in order to attract manufacturing sector, we cannot ignore service sector, first of all. For example, first of all, what is domino effect? In case of automotive industry, it is well established. If a OEM is coming, if Suzuki Toyota is coming, tier 1 players will come automatically. But is it happening in other industries? Probably not. If we want to attract food processing companies, maybe we can think about food services companies also. Now, recently from Japan, real estate investment has started coming in India. So this is the time we should simultaneously focus on maybe construction material manufacturing companies. Another part to this is we must focus on financial service companies in India. we must attract foreign financial service companies, and especially I'm referring to banks first. Why? In any country, most of the manufacturers are locally associated with their local banks. So before going to any new country, they take first advice from those banks. Now, if we have all those banks in India, well structured there, I'm very much sure those banks will be in a position to suggest India as the next destination. Second, now is the time we need to identify strategic product or strategic sectors for us. Right now, we have been thinking about India as a holistic image. India is one India. But if we identify some of these specific sectors and make policies around that, it would be very helpful for investors. Third one, communication strategy, strong communication strategy, which means we need to tell our investors globally that yes, things are in place. There are many things we have done in India, but people don't know about that. And how to do that? Probably fourth part, micro level processes we need to improve in India by bringing in digital solutions. Actually, I want to re-echo what Mr. Deepak Bagla mentioned. He raised a very interesting point that in next couple of weeks, all global investors would be able to see where is land available, sitting back in their home. So this is something very interesting. This is something which will kick in the interest of foreign investors. Can we do something more? Can we streamline our micro level port operations? Can we bring more and more digitization over there, e-application, e-approvals, e-learning modules? If we say approval process is simpler in India, why can't we put e-learning modules on our website? So those are my high-level suggestions.
Sunny, no, absolutely, and I think they make sense. I mean, completely in alignment. We do have about 7 minutes, and I want to come back to Mr. DK Singh and Deepak Bagla. But before I come back, one last question for Mukesh. Mukesh, if you're there, you made this point about getting investments from China would require us to do more action than and less talk, because we need to be very careful about how we position it. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how do we move forward and how can we work with US IPF on that.
Nilay, the way we see it is the US companies, when they look at their China plus strategy, they will not abandon China because they want still access to that market. So they will start focusing making in China for China and not making in China for the rest of the world. So that trend we are seeing. I think what we need to do is look at, and we are looking at almost 200 plus of those companies, and ask them, what can we do to help you get access to the Indian market and access to the Indian continent, so they can make in India and make in India for the rest of the world also. And and a lot of these companies are quietly moving their production into India itself. So I think what we need to do is have a task force which can pick one company at a time and start looking at them. And I don't want to name companies, but a lot of companies have already moved quietly their manufacturing into India itself and have started exporting a lot of their products out of India into the US. And this is more in the electronic environment. So I think it's important we build that confidence. The other factor which is very critical is in the boardroom, in the US at least, there's a sense of fatigue which is coming in, because you see up and down a movement on the confidence level of, do we invest in India or not invest in India? So I think it's important that we start talking to the board level and tell them as to what India has done, the assurance India is giving, because India is still a very tremendous market. India is a very, very promising market. And there's big alignment from a value system, from a culture perspective, and also on a ROI, return on investment perspective. Somebody mentioned Blackstone. Blackstone's has over almost 400 investments around the world, and the most profitable return is coming out of India. You talk to Carlyle, the same story. So companies, once they come in and establish themselves, their returns are the best in the world itself. So I think we need to tell a story much more effectively and efficiently itself.
Absolutely, and I will come back to Deepak here. Deepak, you and I have worked in this space for a while now, and even today, there are certain things that I did not know, and I think it reinforces the point that we don't sell ourselves very well. And I think the point that Mukesh made about being targeted, it is something I'm sure Invest India is looking at. But having heard everybody, you're still as confident as you were before that we will make this an opportunity.
It's not just confidence. I talk of actual numbers. Mukesh spoke about 100 odd companies. We are in touch over 1,000 companies, 1,440 companies currently being worked on. A large number even from the US. See, let me put things a little in perspective. Every company is not going to come to India. Companies are going to come to India when it fits into their business model.
Yes.
What is the business model? If they're looking at a local market where they believe that their product has a good market, where they can get economies of scale, and then gradually they will look at the global market moving on. And which is, let us say, only looking at the geography X, and that geography X has a very good FTA with Y, it doesn't need to come to us. And those companies will not come to us. But there are a large number of companies which are looking at us and which are moving to us. Now, let me put it the other way. And I think Sunny put it very well. One of the reasons we don't tell our story very well is because, and this goes back to the points from our friends from the US on the call, a former US ambassador in India in his farewell speech had said that one thing he could not do in India was to criticize India because the Indians did it so well themselves. And the point is, we are such a self-critical society that we forget how far we've come. And when you are at an inflection point in your growth, which is where we are today, you have a lot of horror stories of the past. But then you have a lot of new stories coming up of the future, and those are increasing in number. Now, it's up to you that which ones you want to adopt when you talk and when you look forward to. I see both in my office. We are the agony aunt of the country in many ways. But what I see is, I see a large growth of those news stories coming up, of a world's largest wind power company saying and moving their plans from other parts in the region to India after their first experience. Because from the day their board gave them approval to the day the first blade came out of their factory in India happened in under 15 months. It is the fastest ever they had in the world. The best other was in a neighboring country at 18 months. It's not that India doesn't do it. India has been doing it. And the thing is, which is what happened at Davos, sorry Nilay, I always cross my time point, but what happened in Davos was a roundtable of 18 top global PE investors. And one of them, which is one of the top 3 in the world, said they are going to do a 2x of their investment in India in the next 12 months. And there was a very interesting thing which he said. He said, the reason is every tomorrow of India is better than today. I think that is what gets you your investors. We have a lot to do. I completely agree. But we've also come a long way. That's what I'm saying.
No, absolutely, Deepak. I think the optimism level that we have in India is unmatched by any place else in the world, and that's what leads to growth and investment. If I could come to you, Mr. Singh, you've heard us. You've heard so multiple references to MSME. I think clearly that's a big opportunity for us going forward. Just as one point, apart from the fact that ASSOCHAM representing 4.5 lakh MSME really wants to partner the ministry, but I think one other aspect is really the whole area of fintech, which is where I think many of our MSMEs can benefit from, and that we need to look at, and focus on creating market as opposed to enabling them all the time. Because I think if there is market, they'll invest in whatever is required. So, but to you, for your final comments.
Mr. Singh, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, now I am audible.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so actually, the last comment was very positive. That every day we have a higher positive. So this is really very encouraging things, and we need to think that way. And because things are really, positive, and it is getting positive. So as our sector, MSME, we are committed, for any handholding which is required at this crucial juncture for any, sector. And there is lot of opportunity. And some of the suggestions, for e-learning, we are going to adopt in a very significant manner, because we are handling very large scaling, and now they have realized that it's very difficult to carry on in a physical environment. But yes, certain things has to be done on ground, on job training. But it is going to be adopted, and we are in a very advanced stage of discussion with different platforms to introduce e-learning in different fields across India, across all the technology centers, across the development institutes. Then how to create demand? Actually, one of the participant was talking about to have a offtake policy, in defense, because there are many defense component manufacturers. They would like to, chip in not only defense but also railways. The railway present procurement from MSME is not very significant. It is, the total procurement of government from MSME is only 40,000 crores. Out of that, contribution of railway is now limited. So if railway, is one of the area where there is a good opportunity to have a demand of different products, and but it will require again a offtake policy from the railways and industry body and all. You need to work with the railways. What are those bottlenecks in the tendering process, or requirements, specifications, where what is the mismatch? We need to understand and work on it. Then the identification of sectors, and what Mr. Goel was saying, we are actually trying to focus on core manufacturing in automobiles and even bicycles. Now we are getting representation that bicycle is going to come in a big way, provided there is a infrastructure to have a safe bicycle movement. So lot of requests and ideas we are getting. So therefore, government would like to focus on these sectors, and including these agri businesses, agri logistics, agri processing. So those type of things we are happy, and will be happy to work further with you people, and we would like to work in clusters. If you identify a cluster, we will love to work on those issues. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No, absolutely. As somebody said, and I completely agree. I think MSME today has a minister who's well known for producing results. We've never had a more what would be the right word? Interesting secretary that we've had, and now we have you. And therefore, I think we really look forward to lots of things happening in MSME going forward. But Deepak, I will come back to you for this for the wrap up. I know we are 4 minutes ahead of our scheduled closure, but back to you.
Thank you so much, Nilay. I think that's like always wonderfully done. I think each of the speakers have articulated their points so well that the summing up actually is not really the required at this point in time. However, there are a few pointers that really hit hard, and I'm going to take a few of them. Is that this crisis is in front of us? We're going through the crisis. We can't let it go waste. So we have to make the most of this crisis. That's number one. Number two, the business models are de-risking globally, and therefore it is exceptionally important, keeping in what Deepak said, and when I say Deepak Bagla is what I mean, that countries and businesses which will supply into a particular geography may not come to us, but there are a lot of people who would want to look at the market of India. And once they are able to put their foothold into the market of India, they could have expansionary plans for the rest of the world. I think there's a lot of material that we import into India, which need not be imported into India, and we can capably develop and produce those competitively at right quality, at right quantity, and at the right price. So these are a few things that I thought will be important. Singh Saab, you talked about clusters. I think that's the way forward. Particularly one of the 12 clusters that the Minister of Commerce has chosen. ASSOCHAM is working on leather, footwear and apparel and leather furniture on this space. And I think when we deep dive into this space, we realize that, you know, it's so much technology and it is so much that goes into making of a shoe, for whether it's a male or a female, what kind of shoes, whether it's sandals, office shoes, leisure shoes, synthetic shoes, rubbers. So there's so much to understand within the same space. But if you do not have all these people under one roof, you will never succeed. There are millions of pairs that have to be generated. So therefore, the cluster approach, I think, is extremely, extremely important. Somebody has spoken about, I think it will always be simplification of procedure, simplification of procedure, simplification of procedure, getting more digital, getting individuals out of the way. I think that's the way forward. Deepak has mentioned about this whole space of buying land, being availability transparently for people without any human intervention. I think is a great thing that is happening. Mukesh talked about American companies making only for China and not making for the world. It's a great thing. I think that something rings a bell in my mind, that there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of people to make for the world, and they're looking where from. And India possibly could be an answer, and that's the takeaway from me. And finally, I think, which is, I will also once again thank Deepak Bagla. I think we talk too negative. We are so self-critical about everything that we beat it ourselves down to such levels that is unimaginable. I think the reporting of our successes is not happening. Open the television, open the newspaper, I don't see anything positive there. I see only negativity all around, why this has failed, and there's a post-mortem done onto everything that happens. And I'm sorry, I have nothing against any channel or anybody, but I think all of us, including me, needs to be responsibly behaving towards the purpose of this country and talking positively at this point in time and singing only one tune, that what did we succeed with? What we fail with, we are going to obviously work with and ensure that we are going to improve on this. And this is what I take away from this. I don't know what all you took from it, but this for me is a very, very knowledge expanding webinar that has taken place. Thank you, each one of you. ASSOCHAM is indebted to get your time. Unfortunately, Mr. Kant had to leave midway. There were technical errors, technical bandwidth issues with his office. This technology, I believe, was not compatible there, but we will sort that out. And I have just spoken to him, so we will get him back once again. He has promised to come back, and we will request you all to meet another time, another place, and we will discuss more of this. So once again, thank you to one and all. Really, really thank you for this, and all the delegates who have joined us.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.